I feel as if, China and Iran and Russia, etc., they probably all have journalists, don't you think? Either directly or by influence, or people who lead in their direction just get the right kind of jobs, and they become the writers. And that is World War III, essentially. World War III is what we do with cyber plus what we do with information warfare. So we are in deep information war with China and Iran and our other adversaries. And I don't know if we know it. It's hard to win a war you don't know you're fighting, right? I think we've reached a point, especially with the ability to communicate anywhere, anytime, adding to that the fact that humans are bribable and there's a lot of money in the world. I feel as if we're reaching the point where every government is just going to be controlled by outside money because they can. And it looks like the way governments will be controlled is through the news. So if you try to control the government by, let's say, bribing or directly controlling an American politician, well, you can do that, but that's a little risky, isn't it? Controlling a politician. If somebody finds out the politician took a check or did a paid speech for some other country, yeah, you're probably going to find out. There's going to be a record of it somewhere. It's a bad look. But suppose instead you create an army of influenced journalists who, little by little, seep into the mainstream media and become your news. What happens when you've got some influential journalists, and they're creating the news narrative, and it's just based from China or Russia or Iran or something? That looks to be what we have. Because what would have stopped China or Iran or anybody else from capturing journalists in this country? What would stop them from doing it? I can't think of anything. Because there'd be probably 100 different ways that you could bribe somebody, and why wouldn't they? I'm sure we're doing it. We must be doing it in other countries, right? So the new war, if you will, is an information war. I hate to say info wars, but maybe somebody who came up with that term understood what was coming better than anybody else. And that is World War III, essentially. World War III is what we do with cyber plus what we do with information warfare. So we are in deep information war with China and Iran and our other adversaries. And I don't know if we know it. It's hard to win a war you don't know you're fighting, right? So China could actually conquer the United States just with changing the news narrative. And, looking at the way things are going, it looks like they have a good shot at it, right? So, our country is given its information by stooges. So here's a question for you. Do we know how much influence China in particular has on different news organizations? Do we know? I don't know. Gordon Chang, who is very anti-China, maybe as much anti-China as I am, he writes in the Hill that the Chinese leaders did not test Trump militarily. They didn't push him, but they're already pushing Biden. And this part blew my mind. This is what Gordon Chang writes in the Hill. He says that President Xi, looks like he is going after Biden, as it is clear Chinese leaders think, or at least thought, they could bully the new American president. Now, that's the kind of statement where you say, how do you know what anybody's thinking, right? And that's kind of a stretch. But Gordon Chang supports that statement by saying, how do we know that? He goes, the derisive is it derisive or derisive? The derisive comment of Di Dongsheng, a professor at Renmin University, were recorded and publicly circulated around China. Di basically claimed that China would be able to determine outcomes in Washington if Trump lost the election. That's pretty shocking, right? So in other words, we actually have a recording where somebody who's a professor at a university that's well controlled by the Chinese government, and he was willing to say in public that China would be able to determine outcomes in Washington if Trump lost the election. What? They're saying it out loud, that if it's Biden, they can push him around, and that Trump, they weren't willing to push him around because it was too risky. Wow. Now, will you see this story in Reuters? No. Will you see this story in CNN? No. MSNBC? No. No, you won't. So it's left to pundits and people like me and people like Gordon Chang to tell you that story. And I'm going to start a new segment I'm going to call the Fake News News. It's news about the fake news. Because the fake news has covered the fake news. I don't need to cover that. I'll just cover the fake news as news. For example, apparently there's a gentleman who's been arrested. I don't know if he's been arrested, but he's being charged or something, as an Iranian agent who apparently has contributed opinion pieces to the New York Times. That's right, an unregistered agent of Iran has written opinion pieces in the New York Times. Now, do you say to yourself, New York Times, how can they be so whatever they are to allow some unregistered agent of a foreign country to get through and be putting opinion pieces in their publication? I have a feeling that this is so common that probably almost every news organization has been at least a little bit touched by this sort of thing. I feel as if, China and Iran and Russia, etc., they probably all have journalists, don't you think? Either directly or by influence, or people who lead in their direction just get the right kind of jobs and they become the writers. So I don't know that this is unusual. I would expect that Iran and lots of other countries would have people they influence who in turn influence you, and you wouldn't necessarily know about it until one of them gets caught and it's a headline. So unfortunately, I think this is more normal than not normal. And when you're reading your fake news, one of the questions you could ask yourself is this: hey, is that article being written by an enemy of my country? You don't know. You just don't know. But you have to at least consider the possibility that the person writing the article is literally the enemy of your country. That's a real thing, and it's common enough, I think, that you should sort of have that little program running in the back of your head. Hey, is this a real opinion, or is this an enemy of my country? All right, I'm going to give you one more look. We're here in Tahiti on the way home to the States tonight. Late flight. Oh, so tomorrow morning I should be still flying, or at least unavailable. If I land before it's time for the Periscope, maybe I'll try doing it from the car or something if I have a signal. But chances are you will not see me tomorrow, but you'll see me the day after. And I'll try to do it tomorrow if I can.